Good morning, all, depending when you're watching this. Good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, how to voice radio. So today, I am going to be showing you the very interesting Alolan Ninetales deck with which Zachary Bokhari won the 2017 World Championships in the Senior Division. But before we talk about Alolan Ninetales, we need to talk about Alolan Vulpix. And even though it's an evolving basic, it is one of the very best cards that actually came out in the Guardians Rising expansion. So not Breakthrough that just come out, but Guardians Rising that came out just a teensy bit before. It's got this attack beacon for 0 energy. Search your deck for 2 Pokemon and put them into your hand. We see this played in Gardevoir decks. We see it played in Metagross decks. We see it played in all sorts of decks, because to be able to just for 0 energy search for 2 Pokemon and then have them in your hand ready to evolve the next turn, it's too good, ladies and gentlemen. Not to mention the fact that you can actually here use an energy to retreat your active, maybe something like a Remoraid, and then put Alolan Vulpix up, and then you don't need an energy to use Alolan Vulpix. If you go second, this is an amazing turn 1 play, because you can manually retreat, and then you stick up the Alolan Vulpix. Attack for 0 energy. But the great thing in this deck is, you then actually get to evolve and attack. So if you start with Alolan Vulpix, you can, attach some energy, and off you go. And Alolan Ninetales is a very good Pokemon. For a double colourless energy, you can hit 50 to one of your opponent's bench, or I suppose they're active, and you will hit for weakness if you hit the active. For 2 water, 1 colourless, you do 160 and discard 2 energy. Now, this is both good and bad. 160 is good. No doubt about that. It's a great number. It's the same number that Turtonator hits, and the numbers just work really, really well here. With a choice band, you're hitting a 1-hit KO on the 190 HP Pokemon. Things like, for instance, Lapras. I would also say Turtonator here, but of course, you're hitting Turtonator for weakness. That's really handy, but if you then add a Professor Kukui, and Zachary did play a Professor Kukui, you're then hitting 210, getting a 1-hit KO on every stage 1 GX other than Alolan Muck, and Alolan Muck really didn't see any play at the Pokemon World Championships. It wasn't particularly good. Now, discarding the energy is bad as a general rule, but then again, you've got Aqua Patch to recover the energy, so it's not like you can't get it back. And with stuff like Gardevoir running around all weekend, being able to discard that energy could actually be really, really handy, because you might discard the energy and put yourself out of range to be KO'd by one of those Gardevoir, which is incredibly handy. And then, of course, you get Ice Path GX, which kind of reminds you of the old Mewtwo. Ice Path allows you to move all damage counters from Alolan Ninetales to your opponent's active Pokemon. You just completely heal while damaging your opponent's Pokemon. This means that until you use your GX attack, your opponent has always got to be super careful about hitting you if they don't get a 1-hit KO. Gardevoir hits you for 180. You can then Guzma up a Tapu Lele, heal while taking 2 prizes. It is, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit silly, and just for a double colourless energy. And actually, going back to Blizzard Edge here, do remember that it's discard 2 energy, not 2 water energy. So if you've got a double colourless on there, you can discard the double colourless, and then you could just attach 1 energy next turn, and off you go. Now, one Pokemon that has great synergy with Alolan Ninetales is this promo Tapu Koko. It's got free retreat, so it's a great turn 1 Pokemon, but also it's got Flying Flip for a double colourless energy, and you are playing, of course, for double colourless energy. I will give you the full list at the end. For double colourless, 20 damage to all your opponent's Pokemon. Now, when you combine this with Alolan Ninetales, hitting 50 to one of your Pokemon for the same double colourless cost, now, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking. Because what you can do in the early game is you can just sit there flying flipping for a couple of turns, and then if your opponent goes and gets a Curlier out, as long as you've flying flipped twice, you can then hit that Curlier for 50 and get the KO. Or maybe you just flying flip 3 times and get a Rouse. What flying flip and Ice Blade do together is essentially put your opponent on an early game clock. Either they get their evolutions and they get rolling, or they lose. And if you play against decks like Gardevoir, like Metagross, if they don't get set up fast enough, you will win. And as a side note with a weakness, you are hitting weakness against any of these Volcanion Turtonator decks, although do remember that Ho-Oh has a different weakness, and you are being hit for weakness by Metagross, but Metagross really didn't have a great showing this weekend. I saw very, very little of it doing the rounds. Now, there are a couple of support Pokemon here. You've got your Octillery, which is of course extremely handy because it allows you to just draw until you got 5 cards in hand. Mid to late game, you get end, you don't care. It helps you find your energy, it helps you find the supporter you want, it's just really good for consistency. And of course, Tapu Lele, because, you search for whatever supporter you want. Why would you not? It's great. And not a terrible attacker. And then, Zachary chose to play a couple of Pokemon that really just stop specific decks. He played Sudowoodo, which pretty much gave him a win against Rayquaza. Rayquaza has a really good matchup against this deck. Fill up your bench, Emerald, break for the win. But with Sudowoodo, it means they can only actually be hitting 120. You're just in a great position here. And because Rayquaza is so reliant on abilities of stuff like Shaman and Dragonite, they are not going to be playing any ability lock. And Giratina, which just turns off the abilities of break Pokemon. I should at this stage remind you that Zachary played a Greninja break deck in the finals. Yeah. Giratina basically said, hey, Greninja, ha! You lose. In terms of energy, it's just water and double colourless. It's fairly standard. In terms of supporters, there was some fairly standard stuff. There was a Bridget, so that you could get that turn 1 Bridget to get all of your Vulpix and Remoraid out. We see that in so many games nowadays. We see Sycamore and N because they are the standard cards that you use to draw. We saw a pair of Guzma because you know what? Guzma is just a really good card. It's a switch, it's a Lysander. Being able to drag one of your opponent's Pokemon off the bench and KO is great. Not quite as important in this deck as it is in most, because you've got the Alolan Ninetales to hit for the bench, but hitting that one Gardevoir for a KO before it can get too much energy on, hitting that Metagross that's retreated but hasn't been able to max potion, yeah, it's really good. But then there were some slightly less usual supporters. There was the aforementioned Professor Kukui, which I think is really important in this particular deck because it allows you to hit that 210 to get stage 1 GXs. And when you're playing a 2-2 Octillery line, it's far more likely that you're going to be able to find these supporters. Or should I say, find them when you need them. There's also a Pokemon Center lady here. 60 damage, remove special conditions, really quite funky. With stuff like Espeon running around, then it's good to get rid of special conditions, but also just heal 60, ruin the maths of your opponent. And then Karen. And in the same way Giratina really helped your Greninja matchup, and Sudowoodo really helped your Rayquaza matchup, Karen really helped your Vespiquen matchup. Don't forget you've always got Versus Seeker to reuse these, and you've always got Tapu Lele to search these supporters out, and it really is handy here. Just essentially having free matchups sewn up before you even start. And this is really what made Zachary's Alolan Ninetales deck better than most. The fact that you were able to go into a matchup thinking, right, if I play Greninja, I've got this. If I play Rayquaza, I've got this. If I play Vespiquen, I've got this. And if I play anything else, I'm still hitting for at least 160 damage per turn, or spreading around damage with Koko and Ninetales to stop my opponent getting set up in the early game. And that really is where this deck comes in. Early game, Koko and Alolan Ninetales. Mid to late game, hitting for big damage with Alolan Ninetales. And then, of course, you've got these cards that make sure that specific matchups are borderline unlosable. Now, in terms of some other trainers here, we've got, obviously, the usual things like Floatstone, Choice Band, Ultra Ball. We see these fairly standardly. Field Blower is important to get rid of tools, Fighting Fury Bout to get rid of their extra health, and Choice Band to get rid of all of their extra damage. But also here you've got your auxiliaries. You're kind of relying on the abilities with your auxiliaries, so you know what? You really need to make sure that your opponent's Garbodor doesn't go nuts, so Choice Band is quite good here. But really the big ones are Aqua Patch and Rough Seas, and these are very specific to these water decks. Aqua Patch recovers those water energy only to the bench, which means you can firstly set up your Ninetales earlier, but secondly, make sure that your Ninetales can still keep attacking after discarding their energy. And then Rough Seas chose not to play Brooklet Hill here, chose to just go for the Rough Seas, just so that you can heal 30 damage per turn. And when you can combine the healing of Rough Seas and Pokemon Center Lady with the idea that you can, if you don't get one hit KO'd, use your GX attack, then you really put your opponent in a very uncomfortable position in terms of just being able to take a KO. Now you might notice that there is no non-GX here. Why? The reason is simple. Hex Maniac. It takes a lot of resources. You're talking a water energy and a double colourless to get this non-GX rolling. That's a lot of resources, ladies and gentlemen. And if your opponent drops a Hex Maniac, it's all for nothing. Hex Maniac is everywhere. It's not good enough before rotation. And let's look at the deck he got. Early game pressure with Alolan Ninetales and Tapu Koko. Healing with Rough Seas and Pokemon Center Lady. And then, of course, you've got just mid to late game damage of Alolan Ninetales. Add in your Sudowoodo, your Giratina, and your Karen, and free matchups are already gone, and you can start seeing how Zachary won the World Championships with this deck. I'm not a huge fan of Alolan Ninetales pre-rotation, because Hex Maniac is so good against the non-GX. But this particular list, ladies and gentlemen, oh my lordy, it's spectacular. But I want to know what you think about it, so go nuts in the comment section. But, you know, be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy and Twitch at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. That's where the live action is, and there's going to be a Mario Kart stream at 8 PM UK time tonight. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus pods, etc., then go and check it out at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.